Hey Stackers, welcome to Mom's Basement, where today we're diving into the wonderful world of currencies and maybe not what you think. You've heard the phrase, go big or go home. Well, what if the real phrase we wanted was go small or go home? You confused? I was confused by it too, until I heard this was a message from Chad Carson, AKA Coach Carson, the real estate guru, who also has done a magnificent job of figuring out really what he should focus on with his time. We're going to talk to him about that right now. Let's see exactly what Coach Carson's got going on. But before we do, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to our channel, of course, hit the bell so that you get all the future videos from us about things that help your wallet, your time, and your career. All right, let's see what Coach Carson's got for us. You've got a great story that kind of kicks this off of three different investors. One, I think the first one owns 10 properties. Do you mind walking us through these three couples?
Yeah, this is a story I heard early in my career that really influenced me. And there's three couples, and the short version is they all wanted to go to Europe. They wanted to go on this trip together, but they'd been buddies for 15 years. They got started in real estate together. 15 years later, they're all pretty successful, and they're like, hey, let's take a trip. Well, they all took a trip, and just to give you a background, the first investor had 10 properties. They lived in the heartland of the U.S. in St. Louis, Missouri. The second investor lives in Oakland, but they have some long distance properties in North Carolina, and they have about 50 units, mainly like apartment units. And the third couple, like they're the richest couple. They own like syndications and apartments, thousands of units, and they've put together this big organization. They make like hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million a year. They're making tons of cash flow. They all go on the trip. They get after 2 weeks, and one of them proposes extending the trip. Hey, let's do another 2 weeks. Everybody could do it except for the wealthiest couple because they had meetings to go back to and they had to speak somewhere and they have projects. And the interesting thing about the story was the people with less money on paper had a much larger bank account of time and flexibility to be able to do the things they wanted to do, to have the spontaneity, the flexibility. And for me, it was an aha moment because it's like money's important, but don't let that be the only measure you have if you actually want to work it backwards from a good life, from a quality of life, of lifestyle. And that was just a wake-up call for me.
This idea that there's different currencies, that we will not waste money, being financial geeks, right? Financial geeks hate wasting money. We get this pit in our stomach, but we will waste all kinds of time, Chad, chasing $3 and $4 opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, time is the ultimate currency. I mean, you have 24 hours in a day. Everybody does. Doesn't matter if you're wealthy or don't have much money. And you also, how long are you going to live? Like, nobody knows. Like, we don't know. And so you have to balance this out. And that's why I mentioned earlier taking breaks in my career. Like, not everybody wants to travel, but I think if you grind away for 20, 30 years, hoping someday to live your life, what then? Like, are you going to make it there? Like, nothing's guaranteed. So it's got to be a balance between, like, I'm a type A person. I like goals. I like measuring money. I like doing this stuff. But my wife actually is a really good balance for me. She and I have worked together to like balance that enjoyment of the now with the long-term aspirations. And the cool thing is, like, if you plan it well financially, you can do both. Like, you can have your cake and eat it too. You have to, as Paula Pant, our friend, mutual friend, always says, you can't have everything. You have to make a choice. There's a trade-off here. But if you work it backwards from what you want, you can build a financial plan, a real estate plan that allows you to enjoy and kind of taste the fruits of that long-term quality of life all along the way.
Well, this is what was so interesting to me about this project was that you still have goals, you still have big goals, but the goals aren't the same monetary goals. I feel like your goals now are around community and craftsmanship and family, and you've got this whole other set of goals now, which I feel like in some ways are bigger than just making the Scrooge McDuck pile of money bigger.
Yeah, money allows you up to a certain point. But when I had the kind of identity crisis, to be honest with you, like when I started, and I think this happens when you meet one goal, you start saying like, what next?
Right.
Because I identify with that goal.
We look at the horizon, right? And as we move, the horizon keeps moving.
Exactly. The goalposts keep moving, to use a football metaphor. Yeah. But one thing, when I was on one of these sabbatical trips, I did some soul searching, and I started asking myself that question that a lot of people ask when you're 16, 17, 18 years old. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Who do you want to be? And I'm like, in my 30s, thinking about this. And one of the things, I just followed my interests. Like, what are you interested in? Well, I have kids, and like, I'd love to be present with them, and I'd love to be kind of coaching their little volleyball and their soccer, and that's fun. I'd love to be there when they get off the bus. So that was like one aspect of my life that's hard to measure, but man, is that important. And then another aspect that I was just interested in, as I was pushing my kids in the stroller in my community, I got really frustrated that my local Clemson, South Carolina community was not built for anybody but cars. Like, you couldn't walk anywhere. A quarter of a mile away to my park, I couldn't walk without getting hit by a truck. And so I started volunteering, and some friends and I built a nonprofit in 2014 to build a network of walking and biking trails in the town because nobody was working on it. I'm like, the entrepreneur in me is like, wait a minute, nobody's doing this. And so I've been beating my head against the wall. It's been a frustrating, long process, but man, I am more passionate about this trail system called the Green Crescent Trail than I am making $10 million. Like, I could care, and I'm not making $1. I don't want $1. I'm giving a lot of money to this thing, but man, is it purposeful? Is it meaningful? And I feel like it's a legacy that my town, my small community, 10, 20 years from now, it can make a big difference. So I think we entrepreneurs, we investors have a lot of other things we could do with our lives that matter, that are meaningful, that are needed, that are beyond just piling up a bunch of money and swimming around in your money.
You say investors who want to be small and mighty share a few common principles, and I want to dive into a few of these. Life comes first, business comes second. It's 2007, you write. And you said how, you during one of your sabbaticals you wrote, but you and your business partner together actually did this, you say. You had a heart-to-heart about your real estate business. Tell me about that heart-to-heart during the middle of the meltdown.
Yeah, we had grown a lot in 2007, and it was going back to my 10X, go big kind of mentality. That was our goal, and we sort of accomplished our goal. Like, we bought a bunch of properties. We were flipping houses and making like $60,000 per flip, and we had piled up some cash. But at the end of 2007, we were just busy, and we were also taking a lot of risk. And here's the financial meltdown. Things are shifting. The ground is shifting underneath you. And my business partner, I think, was wiser than me. He was the one who kind of like, hey, wait a minute, like let's talk about this. Should we keep growing? And we had this exercise to write down a list of things just personally that you would like to do on a day-to-day basis if money were not an object. Like, what would you do? Like, what would your life look like? And this is a great exercise for people to do if they hear this, and I wrote down things like, I want to hike in the middle of the day because I live in a beautiful part of the country with hiking trails and nature. I want to travel with my family. I just got married that year. If I have kids, I want to be present with them. I wanted to do things that, yes, they required money, but like a lot of these things like hiking or playing pickup basketball for me is another big one. Like, these you needed time. Like,
and
you needed
mobility.
Flexibility.
Yeah.
And mobility. And so working it backwards, we said, how can we build a real estate investing business that would actually accomplish those things, that would give us the money we need, but not necessarily, the main criteria was life first. Like, how can we make that list happen? And it's amazing. When I look back on that list, like, it's amazing. Like, just last year in Spain, we hiked the Camino de Santiago hiking. I played basketball every single Friday night with my amigos, and I hung out with them and got to learn how to speak Spanish. I was there picking up my kids from school every day, dropping them off, walking with them. My wife and I got to spend a lot of time taking classes. I mean, so it's possible. Like, you can, if you specifically lay out what you want to do, it's flexible. You can make it happen, but you have to start with that. Going back to the Covey thing, I think if you don't work backwards from your life first, money will take over. I call it like a Frankenstein monster. Like, business will become a Frankenstein monster who will take over your entire life if you let it, but you have to kind of keep it under control. You got to say, hey, Frankenstein, like, I'm in charge here. You're serving my life, not the other way around. And it happens all the time where ambitious entrepreneurs wake up 10 years later thinking, like, what was I starting this for?
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing all this? Here I
got
am.
a ton of employees. I've got this huge business. It takes forever to run the business, and I can't escape it. So instead of the business working for me, I'm a cog in the machine that I build. I trap myself. The other way that this is not, you don't change overnight. I noticed something from two different parts of your story. You talk about how in 2007, you had this heart-to-heart and you realized time and mobility are important. But then you write later on, Chad, that it's 2009 and you feel like you're still kind of running ragged. Like, don't expect you to change overnight. Like, I feel like there's this process of, what the caterpillar Chad becoming the butterfly of Coach Carson.
Yeah. Yeah. It changes a little bit by little bit. Yeah. I mean, 2007 was our aha moment, but we had already dug our hole. Like we had to dig out of the hole. I think we've all been there. We all make mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes in 2006 and 7, but isn't that part of learning? Isn't that part of life? Like none of us are perfect, but I'm still amazed, Joe. Like if you think about like the big picture of like our society is that most people retire, get to retirement age and don't have much money. Like they don't have enough to support themselves. And yet if we learn these kind of things like we're talking about today and whatever path you choose, 10 to 15 years from now, you could be set. You could have a really amazing life, whether that's $3,000 per month coming in for the rest of your life or 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. Like it's just a matter of what your goals are. But there's a pretty simple plan of buying 1 property per year, 2 properties per year, eventually getting them paid off. That can happen in 10 to 15 years. And I'm just blown away that you can just kind of chunk away at that kind of goal at a reasonable pace and end up in 15 years like 150 times better off financially than most people are in society. Like that still blows my mind. And I think if people can get their head around the simplicity of that plan and the mighty part of small and mighty, like how mighty that is, like that's really amazing. If you're 50 years old and you want to do it by 65, if you're 20 years old and you want to do it by 35, like that's 15 years is a long time, but it's also in the big scheme of things is not an insurmountable thing to do.
You talk about enjoying the journey along the way, and it doesn't have to be a sprint. And yet I think, though, Chad, that you were sprinting for several years before you had this aha, right? Do you think that you have the hindsight to know that sprinting might not be a great life, but the sprint was necessary? I'm thinking about people in their 20s. Is it necessary to have that sprint and go, this is not forever, this is maybe a short-term sprint, or is it enjoy it the whole way and maybe not sprint so hard?
Yeah, I look at it more like in seasons, and maybe let's use a metaphor. Like if you're trying to climb to the top of a mountain, and when I was in Peru, we had to climb this big pass to get to the Inca Trail and to get to Machu Picchu. And if you just sprinted up the entire thing, you will fall over dead on the side of the trail. Like it's not possible, right? But you can kind of push it hard for maybe a couple hundred yards, and then start walking a little slower or take a break, or then push it again a little bit harder. And I think that's kind of the optimal way for me is like, I like to go in these 2 to 4 year sprints and then take a break and like enjoy it a little bit and then push for another 2 to 4 years and take a break. And I like that pattern. That works for me. You could call it like long-term ADD. Like you just 10 years in a row, gosh, that's a grind. So yes, sprinting is necessary. And if you're in a lot of debt right now and you're just trying to dig your way out, like you just got to sprint. Like you just got to push it. You got to get that debt paid off. You got to get to another plateau, and then you take a break. Like celebrate, pat yourself on the back. The same with when you're building wealth and buying properties. Like you might need to, if you got 0 properties, maybe you need to get to that 3 or 4 property plateau. You just got to sprint. You got to learn. You got to network. You got to get financing. It's kind of a grind a little bit, but the grind can be fun if you know it's not forever. It's just like, this is something I can do for a period of my life.
It's cool to see that there's different ways to do this. Chad, thanks for hanging out with us and helping our stackers begin with the end in mind. I really appreciate it.
This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Wow. Well, big thanks to Chad for joining us. And you know what? We'll have a link in the description to Chad's latest work, which is Small But Mighty. We have a much longer discussion about this on our podcast. Chad not only talks about his real estate empire, he also talks about the struggles he had building it, not just with building, but also with deciding when is enough. Fantastic discussion, especially if you're worried about better time management and getting that small but mighty empire. I also love our discussion about Chad's personal journey, where he was managing a South Carolina-based empire from Spain, and before that, from South America. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. Hey, for more Stacking Benjamins fun, head to stackingbenjamins.com/welcome. That's our guide to all the different places where we hang out with people like you. And please, if you know somebody else that needs to be smaller and have more time, make sure you like this video so other people see it, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell so you see the next video, which hopefully impacts your wallet, helps you with your focus and building a better career. All right, that's it for me. Time to go help mom wash the dishes. See you later.